So I got some CPUs to upgrade my server with. My server is an HP DL180G6, so it uses LJ1366 CPUs. I decided to go with L5640's. More on that in a little minute. Here they are. I got them on a pair on eBay because generally they're cheaper to get in a pair, and I needed two anyways because it is a dual socket system. And yeah, here they are. They came packaged. They're about 25 bucks for two of them, which really is not bad, especially seeing the performance. I'd happily build more systems using these 1366 chips. The problem is the boards are expensive. The chips are cheap. They're definitely used. You can see remains of thermal paste on them, but they should work fine. And from what I've seen, CPUs, especially in servers where you can't overclock it, really don't die very often. So here's both of them. Let's now go into my rationale of why I picked these chips. For CPUs on the HP DL180G6 and other dual 1366 servers, there's a few CPUs to choose from. And it's basically the E5500 series, E, and then there's a W and an X. So E just means normal, L means low power, W means workstation, which normally is single socket only and very high power for stuff like video editing, and L is low power. Forget if I went over that. And there's the second generation, which is the 5600 series. I think it's a die shrink. It's a Westmere instead of Halium. And I think there's a few extra little features. So my server is already running second gen chips. And I normally just get the second gen chips. The Westmere second gen chips are the only ones you can get 6 cores in. And they're generally just lower power, and they're just better overall. I think you get more L3, so all of these chips, at least the high-end ones, have 12 megs. And the old ones all were 8 with a few 4s. Also, I think you should always get a 4 or 6 core, never get the duals. Really, they're not. The board's too expensive to worry about that. And let's take a look at the CPUs. So, I have the top of the line of the quad-core low-power chip, which is an L5630. So, it's a 2.13 gigahertz. It boosts up to 2 turbo steps, so bus speed's 133 megahertz, so that would be about, I think, about 2.4 gigahertz, 40 watt TDP, so these are incredibly low power chips, what they are. Still actually quite power efficient. They're limited to DDR3 1066, but that's probably still going to be, even if I get a higher speed chip, just due to the fact that if you're running all DIMMs, so I'm using 12 DIMMs total, 6 per CPU, you're normally limited to 1066. Depends on the exact board and CPU server though. So I wanted to go 6 cores, because that's the only way I'm going to get a big performance jump, and I care more about core count than clock speed because I'm running mostly VMs. So, I had a few options price-wise. These chips are incredibly expensive still because they are the fastest possible chips and they hold value for people with like old Mac Pros who want to get everything they can out of them. So, kind of my best bet was a X5650 or a L5640. These are pretty common, relatively cheap chips. The L5638s and 39s came out a little bit later. They were about the same price. I don't know the exact specifics behind them, but they were clocked lower, probably just slightly lower power, probably for some specific OEM. So I was between these two chips. Price was pretty similar. I think this was like 35 or 40 bucks. These were 25 for a pair. The X56s are faster by a good amount. It's about 400 megahertz. But the L5640's have a power consumption of 60 watts versus 95. That's TDP, but looking under real-world examples, people run your saving probably about 50 watts under moderate load, which, yeah, that's worth it for a bit of performance. I'm not too performance happy on the necessary for these CPUs, so that's what I'm going with. If you're more performance-oriented, get X5650, 10 bucks more performance, definitely worth it, especially considering the rest of the system cost. If you want the highest performance, get like an X5680 or X5670, whichever of those you can find cheaply. I'd probably stay away from the quad cores because they're just getting kind of slow these days. Let's go install these on my server. First thing I need to do is get it all shut down and shut on all my VMs and get that all ready. And here I am at my server after shutting it down. It's pretty easy to swap CPUs and most things in these guys. It's a bit different with every model, but here it is for mine. So the top pops off right here, as in the black plastic air shroud. I don't know if I have a video about this, but I've changed a lot of the slot stuff in here, and this is pretty custom and not normal. So then the CPU is under these heat sinks, which you need a Torx bit. For this CPU, these are pretty big Torxes. Yeah, it's that one. and they just screw right out. Normally the higher end servers like the 710s and the 380s will have like no toolless removal for CPU heat sinks, because this is a lower end 180 part. Also, the high end ones, you get more memory slots, you normally get more PCIe slots, and a few other goodies. And we got the CPUs out. Just for fun, if we look at the thermal paste jobs on both of them, that's probably what I'd say relatively fine. It also looks like they bowed these a bit, because there's definitely less thermal compound in the middle, and probably a reasonable strategy, so that it has the best pressure in the middle where the die actually is. Now I'm going to go clean these. I'm lazy, I just clean it with toilet paper. Here comes the actual CPU swap. 1366 is pretty easy, unlike 2011 with its dual mechanisms to require to change CPUs. Here comes out one of the olds. The next one, new ones come in. I don't know exactly if I mentioned this, but you may need a BIOS update, but since this one already had a 5600 series CPU, I shouldn't need it. Hopefully it'll boot just fine. And let's hope. Also, put them in the right way. I didn't do that the last time. And then here comes up my cheap thermal paste, which is super nasty. There's a glob. There's a glob. Not great thermal paste, but I don't care. These are pretty low power chips, and realistically, as long as they're not thermal throttling, I don't care. And the cooling extra on this is pretty darn good. These are relatively beefy coolers for what they are. And 60 watt TDP chips. And we got screen, so it's working right, and that's great. And we see initialized with 12 megs of cache. Doesn't say the exact chip, but we'll check it in software in a little bit. So here I'm SSH'd into the system. It's been running for a couple weeks. No issues that I know of. It's L5640 as it says right here. It's been running fine. Performance-wise, I mean, it doesn't noticeably seem a ton faster, but it is. I haven't ran that many benchmarks before and after to get an exact number, but basically if it's multi-threaded, you get about 50% faster. So I'm not going to run Cinemage now because the system's doing a lot of other things, but it's approximately 50% faster, so about 450 to about 750 in Cinemage. But I mean, that's in a virtual machine on a server that's doing other things as well. I mean, I can't compare it greatly. So another thing I can do is run sensors on here, and that'll show me my temperatures. Currently, it's under pretty heavy load, so I'd say it's about max. Each core has one thread maxed approximately right now, and there's a lot of I/O weight, and it's just doing stuff. And it's sitting at about 50 on the hotter one and about 45 on the cooler one. That's fine. I mean, I won't start getting more until I get into about like the 70s. So there you go. Nothing really to worry about. Is it worth it? I mean, considering the price of these chips, yeah. They're so cheap for the amount of performance they give. Go for the 6 cores. They're a cheap, easy upgrade. And do I need it now? Not really. Realistically, for virtualization, I probably could get away with the quad cores, but it's nice to have. I do use it for things like video compression, and right now you can see that. So if we look at the system right now, we see there's 2 CPUs, and I think it's laid out so that first CPU, second CPU, and then I think these are the, each CPU has its 2 virtual cores, so it's be 1 and 7, 2 and 8, so that way it's pegging, one virtual CPU on each physical core before it starts using the second one. And there's a lot of I/O weight because I'm running a scrub in the background, and the big thing it's doing right now is deduplicating BTRFS because I'm messing around with that. You get a reasonable savings from what I've seen, but it does take forever. So it's nice having the extra CPU for that, and it just kind of keeps your overhead a bit lower for other things running in the background. But the big thing for virtualization servers is you want fast storage, you want your VMs to run on SSDs if at all possible, and you want a lot of RAM. I do have 4 SSDs essentially in RAID 0 for swap, and that is a good improvement over hard drive swap or no swap, but you really want more RAM if you can do it. So thanks for watching this little upgrade video, and subscribe for more server and computer videos in the future.